Today's episode, minor pieces and champions. Today we're going to break down the minor pieces in chess and use the same thought process to explore champions in League of Legends. We will learn how to take this logical approach and mix it in with our own experiences to explore concepts like balance and viability. So in chess we have two different minor pieces. We have the bishop and the knight. Now they both behave very differently, which is interesting because it also means they prosper in very different environments. So the way we're going to break these pieces down is we're going to take four very distinct steps. First, we're going to talk about a piece's movement, right? What does the piece do? Second, we're going to talk about how that piece interacts with other pieces on the board. Third, we're going to use that information to figure out what kind of environment the piece prospers in. And fourth, we're going to talk about how to achieve that type of environment in our games. So let's look at the pieces, and more importantly, look at how we build up the information about them. Let's start with the bishop. 1. How does it move? Bishops live on the diagonals and can travel as far in one direction as the board allows without crossing over another piece. 2. How does it interact? Because they cannot cross pieces, bishop can be tied down and smothered by pieces in their way. When they are free, they work well in pairs to control and threaten large areas of the board. 3. What kind of environment does it want? Bishops want a nice open position with a lot of angles to attack and room to move around. They can be hindered by a lot of pesky pawns living on the same colored square as that bishop. 4. How do we achieve this environment? Well, we want to look for pawn exchanges. We want to strive for an open board where your bishops can claim fresh air. If we have a poor bishop, we want to move pawns off the squares of the same color of our bishop to let him breathe. Get our bishop outside of the pawn chain, find a way to claim and create open diagonals for your bishop. The knight is symbolized by a horse, but it's the bishop that must run free. And if you followed that, congratulations, you now understand the bishop. Then there is the knight. 1. How does it move? Knights move in a unique L shape, jumping directly to their target square. 2. How does it interact? It is the only piece that can jump over friendly and or enemy units, and as a short-ranged unit, knights become stronger the further up the board they move, because it opens up more attacks and potential squares to move to based on that L shape. 3. What kind of environment does it want? Knights love closed positions. It allows the possibility of sneaky attacks and careful repositioning. Keeping your pawn also allows you to form those advanced support points for the short-range knight to move into attack range. Knights are very sneaky. 4. How do we achieve this environment? Well, we want to carefully measure pawn exchanges to keep a tight board, find and build strong homes for your knights, and get them there using their very flexible movement, tight and complex. Never disregard a knight as developed when better options could arise. Knights can batter down the enemy gates, but they need to be comforted and supported the whole way. If a bishop should be a horse, then the knight should be an octopus reaching out and slowly suffocating its prey. And if you followed that, congratulations, you now understand the knight. It's okay if you got a bit lost there. We dipped our toes into some more advanced chess topics, but it's important to show how these topics grow naturally from very simple information. The reason we want to slow down and really think about our source knowledge is that any flaw in it affects every subsequent step of knowledge building. If you use salt instead of sugar, no recipe will help you bake a successful cake. In the same way, a flaw in the way we think about, play, or build a champion or team comp can ruin what would otherwise be a successful strategy or game, regardless of what happens around it. So let's slow down and break down some League of Legends questions using the knowledge building process. You're queuing for 5s with your friends. One confidently declares his intent to support as Veigar this game. During Champ Select, how can you maximize the chance of this pick working out? Let's break down Veigar. 1. Fairly high mana costs. 2. Large single target burst. 3. Long cooldowns outside of Q. 4. Quite good scaling. 5. Area of effect stun. Those are what I consider the most important factors to answer our question. Now, let's directly use that information to talk about interaction. Now, we're also going to list which previous pieces of information we're using to draw that conclusion. So A, based on 1, 2, and 3, removes single targets well, but has a long reload time. B, based on 2 and 4, ideal for snowballing, weak without it. And C, based on 5, allows setup time and can zone off tight spaces. Those are what I consider the key interactions based off the breakdown. Now let's directly use that information to talk about environment. Now this is going to sound a little bit like algebra class. X, because of A, he craves pit comps that burst one target in order to control objectives. Y, because of A and C, pairs well with an aggressive jungler to control the enemy jungle. Z, because of A, B, and C, a snowball burst lane to kill full HP targets. Those are what I consider the ideal environments based off of the interactions. Now let's directly use that information to come up with answers. Answers. Because of X and Z, he wants an AD carry like Jinx or Draven for burst and combo. Because of X and Z again, he wants a top laner like Mundo or Nasus who can run teleport for fast objectives and counter ganks. Because of X, Y, and Z, he wants a jungle like Vi or Elise for control, invades, and counter ganks. And because of Z, he wants a mid like Gragas or LeBlanc to ensure snowball with roaming. Each answer has a foundation that goes all the way back to the very basics of Vigor, and we have created an entire team comp around those simple facts. So we've come up with a solid answer to our question of how should we pick to maximize the potential of support Vigor. For now, we will move on to another question, but next time we'll be coming back to this question and expand on it to explore planning and decision making. Let's try another one. Renekton has no bad matchups, it's frustrating players, and we need to nerf him. How do you change the hulking lizard? The traditional answer to this question is to find the abilities that are making him strong and reduce the numbers on them, but that's really unsatisfying to me. If I say a drink's too sweet, I don't want them to add water to it and call it a day. I want them to retune the ingredients overall to make a better drink. A watered down Manhattan is not a successful drink, and a watered down champion is not successfully balanced. Instead, let's break down the very basics of Renekton as if we had never played him before, and then we will combine that with our own experiences. I'm going to break this down a little bit more casually, but just know the 1, 2, 3 ABCXYZ method we used on Vigor is exactly what's going on. 1. What does he do? Good burst mobility with double dash, innate tankiness, and almost entirely AoE damage abilities. 2. Interaction. Can sail beyond front lines and get to targets, hard to focus down and punish for being in a crowd, damage output and sustain multiplies with targets in the area. 3. Environment. Craves teamfights, AoE damage and tank focus naturally leads to a weak 1v1 and laning phase. And we can stop there. We've already hit a really big inaccuracy. Renekton is a monster in lane and very strong in 1v1 situations. Everything that follows about the champion is tainted by this disconnect, so this is where we will want to do our tweaking to bring expectation and reality closer together and not just nerf but refocus the champion. So what kind of changes would I do in this situation? Well, we want to reduce his ability to lane, but this frees up some power budget so we can make him more interesting in his core aspect, AoE team fighting. Here's a first draft of balance changes. Q no longer heals at all from minions, but heal scales much higher with each additional champion hit. W becomes a medium AoE cone ability a short distance in front of Renekton that applies a small slow. If 2 or more champions are hit, applies the current W stun to all targets. Both activations of E now apply a smaller amount of armor reduction when cast without the Fury bonus, however Dice is now a targeted enemy second dash. We might want to play with the range a little bit. No changes to the ult or passive. These changes focus him more on his positioning in teamfights and weaken the incredible difficulty in disrupting his laning phase. Now this is just my opinion and the actual changes aren't terribly relevant, but the real point is how we got to them not on gut instinct, but by attempting to start from basic information and building from there. And in doing so, we're able to find a real context to use to answer the question of how to balance Renekton. So that is where we will call it for the day. Next time we're going to expand out and show some chess and league examples in practice and talk about implementation. If you like and want to support this kind of content, consider subscribing to the channel, and if you're feeling particularly kinky, consider making a donation to the link below to turn this into more regularly provided content. If you like me but not that much, there's an Amazon link below to Reassess Your Chess by Jeremy Silman. If you buy the book or in fact anything through that Amazon link that day, I get a small kickback and you can feel good about helping me out and buying yourself something nice at the same time. This has been Reassess Your League episode 2, and I will see you guys next time.